identify himself and if he needed anything. But he did not respond and kept walking. The soldiers, although uneasy, were prepared, but since the man appeared unarmed, they did not want to act violently. As he got closer, the soldiers intensified their warnings. But he still did not respond. At one point, a soldier yelled for him to stop, but at that moment the man disappeared from everyone's sight. They say he dissipated into the air as if made of light gas. Then the area was filled with a nauseating smell, similar to that of a decomposing corpse, which lingered for several minutes before dissipating with the wind. The most chilling part is that this figure appeared 3 times during that week, although not always in the same place. The second time he was only seen near the trees, but the third was the most terrifying. He crossed almost the entire camp from one side to the other. On that occasion they fired at him, but the bullets had no effect. He kept moving forward until he disappeared into the air, leaving behind that terrible stench. As is often the case in such situations, each witness had their own beliefs and opinions about what had happened, but there was no doubt that this man did not belong to this world. Due to the clashes with members of organized crime in that area, there is a ranch called La Peligrosa. Following instructions from our superiors, we met with elements of the Mexican army and personnel from the General Police of Justice. We were informed that all of us would participate in an operation that would establish various points in the mountains and other remote locations designated by the government. The primary objective was to organize missions to locate drug labs in the mountains and cultivation areas controlled by the cartels in order to destroy them. The base assigned to my team and me was located in a town called Cupuan del Rio, also in Michoacán. There, we discovered an old testing track for General Motors, abandoned due to constant theft and extortion by organized crime. The track formed a large circle, and in the center was an open space we used as a base to organize our expeditions. The personnel was divided into 2 groups. The first half, which included my team and me, would search for illegal cultivation fields for a week, while the other half stayed at the camp to maintain communications and be ready to send support if necessary. Truthfully, I was very nervous as we were going to spend 7 days walking through the mountains, completely exposed and always at risk of an ambush by our adversaries. Fortunately, everything went well, but ironically, the reason I'm writing to you today arose when we returned to the base. We found everyone very scared and shaken by a strange phenomenon occurring at night. My colleagues who had stayed at the base were constantly on alert for possible attacks from organized crime members. For this reason, it was necessary for at least 10 army soldiers to patrol a perimeter much smaller than the track, which, as I mentioned, was circular. The soldiers on guard reported that during the early mornings, they had seen a man crossing the facilities from one side to the other. The most unsettling discovery was that he wasn't alive. The first time they saw him, the soldiers were guarding the perimeter when, in the distance, among the trees, a man appeared and began approaching them. They described the figure as tall, wearing a hat that concealed his face, and most strangely, appearing almost like a shadow. The soldiers went on high alert and shone their flashlights at him, warning him that they had seen him and that he was in a secured area. However, the man didn't stop and kept advancing. 2 soldiers rushed toward him and, once within a safe distance, greeted him, asking him to identify himself and if he needed anything. But the man didn't respond and continued walking, passing right through the group of soldiers without stopping. The soldiers prepared to use their weapons, although they noticed that the stranger seemed unarmed, which made them hesitate. As the man came closer, the soldiers raised their voices, issuing sterner warnings, but he continued to ignore them. At one point, a soldier shouted at him authoritatively. When he received no response, he fired a shot into the air, but the stranger kept walking. Finally, as they were about to fire at him, the man disappeared before their eyes. The soldiers claimed he vanished into thin air, like a very light gas. After his disappearance, the air was filled with a nauseating stench, similar to that of a decomposing corpse, which lingered for several minutes until dissipating with the wind. The most chilling part is that the man appeared 3 times during that week, although not always in the same location. The second time they saw him walking near the trees. The third, however, was the most shocking as he crossed almost the entire camp from one side to the other. That time they fired at him, but the bullets had no effect, and the man continued advancing until disappearing into the air once again, leaving behind that horrible smell. As is common in such situations, each witness had their own beliefs and opinions about what happened. However, there was no doubt that the man did not belong to this world. All my colleagues and I, who had gone out to search for and destroy drug labs, returned a week later and were greeted with this unsettling story. It was ironic that those who stayed at the base had experienced the most harrowing part. However, we still had to spend one last night there before leaving. On the very night of our return, while we were resting, our dogs, which we always brought for company and as an alert system, began barking frantically. We thought they might be barking at some animal as the area had skunks, possums and badgers. But suddenly the dogs began to whimper. Several soldiers came running in saying the man was manifesting again. We went out to verify and chillingly we discovered it was true. I saw it with my own eyes. That man emerged from the trees, standing about 1.70 meters tall. His appearance was truly strange, completely dark, darker than the night itself. He was more of a shadowy silhouette approaching us. Honestly, we didn't know what we were dealing with. The soldiers pointed their flashlights at him, but they couldn't illuminate him. The situation was far too unsettling, as if we were facing something otherworldly. Some of my colleagues began to pray. Then, something surprising happened. Before the figure could reach us, it dissolved into the air and disappeared, just as others had described. Again it left behind a foul smell. The stench was unbearable. During my work, I had been near decomposing corpses, but none emitted such a nauseating odor, especially in an open area as vast as this one. It was so overwhelming that it nearly made me vomit. Fortunately, the next morning, we received orders to dismantle the camp and leave the area, returning to other bases. We never knew exactly what we had seen, but we left with that chilling experience and the certainty that paranormal phenomena truly exist. After its departure, it left a nauseating stench of death, such a horrible smell that I couldn't even sleep well that night. The next morning we received the order to dismantle the camp. We left the place and returned to other bases. We never knew what we had really seen, but we took with us this unsettling experience and the certainty that paranormal phenomena, music, exist. I have something to share with you, something that has terrified me and kept me awake many nights. It's a difficult experience to tell and very few people know about it, but I feel confident enough to share it here. I don't want to get anyone into trouble, so I'll omit my name and change the names of those involved. I currently live in a city full of movement, which contrasts completely with the place where this story took place. I moved here for work, but much of my family still lives in a small town in the state of Michoacán, where I am originally from. I live alone, but whenever I can, I visit my family. I haven't fully adapted to the rhythm of the city, but that's a different topic. During one of these visits, I experienced something truly terrifying, and I wasn't the only witness. My friends have a soccer team, and they play on a field next to the municipal cemetery. This area is on the outskirts of the town, where there are no houses and the fields begin. One Saturday my friends invited me to their match, and although my physical condition wasn't the best, I accepted. The match ended around 10 p.m. with an exciting victory for our team, and we were in a good mood. There were still people at the venue and another game was about to start. So we moved a bit away and sat near a tree close to the cemetery wall. As time passed, we talked about the game and caught up on our lives, accompanied by some beers. We didn't notice that it had become 1 a.m. By that time there was no one left and most of our team had left. It was just 5 friends and me. El Gallo, undoubtedly the most drunk of all, had returned in his truck with some cold beers, so no one opposed continuing. We were chatting when suddenly we heard a strange sound. It sounded as if someone was digging or moving dirt. "Do you hear that?" Chue said while holding a beer can. "It sounds like someone is digging," added El Gallo. At that moment, a noise like the growl of a large animal echoed. We all fell silent, paying attention. "No way, the noises are coming from the cemetery," one of us said. In any other circumstance, we would have thought it was the cemetery watchman or perhaps a dog patrolling. But these sounds were different. We could clearly hear dirt being moved, followed by what sounded like something heavy dragging. Driven by curiosity, El Gallo ran toward the cemetery wall, and when he reached the boundary he turned to walk around the back. "They're probably grave robbers, those bastards," he repeated over and over while the rest of us urged him to come back. That's when something inexplicable and terrifying happened. In the darkness, we glimpsed a humanoid creature, extremely thin and tall, with a bony and pale appearance. It had no hair and its eyes glowed with a strange light, a mixture of white and yellow. The most chilling thing was what it was carrying in its mouth and hands, which looked more like claws. It was an object wrapped in a white cloth, swollen with dirt. Upon noticing our presence, the creature startled and fled on all fours, jumping out of the cemetery and disappearing into the darkness of the fields. It all happened in a matter of seconds. When we reacted, we ran to El Gallo's truck and he drove us back to the town quickly. No one could believe what we had seen. As we exchanged our experiences, we agreed on the description of the creature, but G's account was the most shocking. Having gone ahead, he had seen the creature up close, just 2 meters away, with a graphic detail that still chills me.